Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Dion, and today we're going to be talking about ballroom and drag culture. Now, this is sort of a controversial topic right now, but it's a topic that I genuinely really love. I love drag, but I wanted to do this video. There's so much cat hair on my mic. And also, I know I look like I'm in a prison cell. I'm still at my boyfriend's house. We're moving in 2 weeks into our new apartment, and then hopefully, so the next 2 videos are still going to be in this prison cell-esque type of thing, and then hopefully after that I'll have a proper filming space that's pretty and aesthetic and all that. So in this video I'm sort of going to be flipping back and forth between ballroom culture, drag culture. They're not the same, but they have a lot of overlap. I wanted to talk about drag and ballroom culture because it is being really attacked right now, especially in the United States. And at the same time, it is at the forefront of music, dance, TikToks, cultural movements. And it has been for 30 plus years now. So I want to talk about it. I will say, hi, I'm a cisgendered white woman. So if I'm your primary resource on ballroom and drag culture, maybe watch Paris is Burning, maybe hear from some Black queer creators and videos like that. I am only here to bring light to this subject on my channel. I'm absolutely not an expert in this. I'm absolutely not a primary resource in this. This is probably going to be a bit of a watered down version and a quick version of what ballroom and drag culture is. So just keep that in mind. If you like fashion and culture commentary in general, definitely make sure to subscribe to my channel because I post videos every Thursday. And with that, let's get into it. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna just run through some quick definitions of terms that I'm going to use, just so we're all clear going in on how I'm using these terms, why I'm using them, etc. The first one is going to be cross-dressing. According to the California government, cross-dressing is a term for people who dress in clothing traditionally or stereotypically worn by the other sex, but who generally have no intent to live full-time as the other gender. So if I put on head to toe, boys' clothes, male clothes, cross-dressing. But that doesn't mean I necessarily live in that gender identity. Cross-dressing has been used as a slur towards trans, non-binary, queer people in general. When I use it in this video, I'm using it in the sense of they are dressing opposite of their gender, or the movement of dressing opposite of your gender. I'm not calling anybody a slur. I'm literally using it as the term of like they are dressing across the gender spectrum, if that makes sense. The other term that I'm going to use quite a bit is queer. This is a term to refer to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and often transgender people. Some people use queer as an alternative to gay in an effort to be more inclusive, since the term does not convey a sense of gender. Depending on the user, the term has either a derogatory or affirming connotation, as many has sought to reclaim the term that was once widely used in a negative way. Queer can often be used as an insult, as a slur, etc. In this video, I'm going to be using it as an umbrella term. I'm going to be using it as an all-inclusive term for anybody that just doesn't identify as heterosexual, cisgendered. If you don't know what those heterosexual means, male-female couples. Cisgendered means you identify with the gender that you were born with. So I was born with lady parts. I identify as a lady. That's cisgendered, just so you know. But queer, I'm just gonna be using anyone that is not straight and cisgendered. Is gonna be in this video, the umbrella term, queer. And the last term, or the last couple terms I'm gonna define are drag queens and drag kings. Drag queen is generally used to accurately refer to a man who dresses as a woman, often celebrity women, like impersonations, for the purpose of entertaining others at bars, clubs, or other events. It's also used as slang, sometimes in a derogatory manner to refer to transgender women. So transgender women and drag queens are not the same. Drag queens are often gay men or men in general who dress up in drag, makeup, hair, wigs, costumes, padding, etc. But at the end of the day, they take that all off and they exist in their life as a man or a gay man or whatever, not a woman, not drag. Transgender is going to be somebody that was born one way but identifies as a different way. So to call a transgender woman a drag queen is to imply that she takes off her drag and lives her life as a man, which isn't true. Transgender women don't take off anything. They are women, etc. Same thing goes for drag kings. Drag kings, same thing, only women dressing up as men for the purpose of entertaining others at bars or clubs. This is not the same thing as a transgender man. I could go and dress up as a drag king and then live my life as a woman if I wanted to. So those are some quick definitions just so we're all kind of clear on the terms that I'm using. According to Wikipedia, a very reliable source on drag and ballroom culture, the ballroom scene, also known as ballroom community, ballroom culture, or just ballroom, is an African American and Latino underground LGBTQ+ subculture that originated in New York City. Beginning in the late 20th century, Black and Latino drag queens began to organize their own pageants in opposition to racism experienced in established drag queen pageant circuits. There are different categories and themes where the contestants compete in, and they even have an opportunity to clap back at the judges. Though racially integrated for participants, the judges of these circuits were mostly white people. While the initial establishment of ballroom mimicked these drag queen pageants, the inclusion of gay men and trans women would transform the ballroom scene into what it is today, a multitude of categories that all LGBTQ+ people can participate in. Attendees walk in these categories for trophies and cash prizes. Most participants in ballroom belong to groups known as houses, where chosen families of friends form relationships and communities separate from their families of origin, from which they might be estranged. In terms of a brief history of drag and all of that, so long as there has been gendered clothing, humans have been cross-dressing. And for as long as cross-dressing has existed, there have been laws and social norms to criminalize it. From Norse and Greek mythology to monks in 500 AD to Pope Joan in 858, cross-dressing has existed. William Dorsey Swan was the first person to describe himself as a drag queen and organized a series of drag balls in Washington, D.C. during the 1880s and 1890s. Swan was arrested in police raids numerous times, including in the first documented case of arrest for female impersonation in the United States on April 12, 1888. In the decades that followed, more than 40 U.S. cities created similar laws limiting the clothing people were allowed to wear in public. In effect, the anti-cross-dressing laws became a flexible tool for police to enforce normative gender on multiple gender identities, including masculine women and people identifying as transgender or gender nonconforming. By the time the counterculture was in full bloom, cross-dressing arrests were routinely getting thrown out of court. Arresting cross-dressing people was mainly a form of just police harassment. If you want to know more about sartorial laws and laws of fashion, I highly recommend the book Dress Codes. It is so good. I own it. I talked about it in my uniform video. So fascinating. And it goes through dress codes, sartorial laws, from the very beginning of time all the way up to literally 2020. So interesting, so fascinating to know that we have been policing the way people dress for absolute centuries. And as you can see here, especially in the US, policing drag, cross-dressing, etc. is not new. Anyway, back to ballroom history. The first known ball at Hamilton Lodge was integrated at a time where racial segregation was upheld in the United States. The racial discrimination prompted Black and Latino attendees to form their own balls, and modern ballroom culture began to develop out of Harlem in the late 1960s and expanded rapidly to other major cities. Ball culture was first captured and shown to mainstream audience in Jenny Livingston's documentary Paris is Burning in 1990. With the rise of social media, ball culture has migrated to such countries as Canada, Japan, and the UK. New York City is the center of the world's drag ball culture. Cross-dressing balls have existed in the city since the 1920s, consisting of primarily white men. They competed in fashion shows and bars 2 to 3 times a year. Black queens would sometimes participate, but rarely won prizes due to discrimination. In the 1970s, Black queens Crystal LaBeija and her friend Lottie began their own drag ball titled House of LaBeija, kickstarting the ballroom culture scene in New York. Crystal and Lottie are credited with founding the first house in ballroom. In 1989, the House of Latex was created as a call to action in the ballroom community to bridge the gap between HIV and STI prevention and ballroom culture. So we talked about House of Latex, House of LaBeija. What are houses?
One has rejection from their mother and father or their family. When they get out in the world, they search. They search for someone to fill that void. I know this for experience because I've had kids come to me and latch hold to me like I'm their mother or like I'm their father because they can talk to me and I'm gay and they're gay, and that's where a lot of that baldness and the mother business comes in, because their real parents give them such a hard way to go. They look up to me to fill that void.
Houses are led by a mother, and they're the most powerful and fierce of them all. And it's like a family. They take in other young queer folk and give them some security and a semblance of family. Many of these people ran away from home, were not accepted, and didn't have a mother or family who wanted or loved them. These houses became family. Often in the queer community, we talk about chosen family, and something that really disturbs me about this drag ban nonsense is that to take away drag, LGBTQ centers, ball culture, all of that, you are taking away some people's only family, only way to freely express themselves, the only place that they can be themselves. Many times these houses, these families provide shelter, food, stability, medical help for members of their family who would otherwise never be able to afford or get it themselves.
It was my birthday. I had just turned 15 years old, and he threw a party for me. Out there, he bought me a cake. I met a lot of drag queens, transvestites, that I didn't believe were, because they were so beautiful. And that kind of sunk into my head, and I guess that's why it kind of made me want to even do it more.
These places are so important because honestly, houses, drag, ballroom culture, sometimes that is the only thing standing in the way of somebody killing themselves. I mean, like, let's be totally real. Or getting killed. I mean, let's be totally real. That's the plain old truth. You think it's this frivolous thing that it doesn't matter, it's just men dressing up as women, it's sexual, it's whatever. This is a suicide prevention. That ballroom, drag, houses, those are suicide prevention tactics because they are allowing people to have a space, to have a family, to be themselves, to be free, and to be safe.
Broken homes or no home at all. And then the few that do have family, when the family finds that they're gay, they X them completely.
A house, let's see if we can put it down sharply. They're families. You can say that, they're families.
I got thrown out of my house. Angie let me stay with her until I got myself together and I got working. She always fed me. She could be a pain in the ass at times, but I wouldn't trade her in for any other mother.
And that brings us to drag and activism. And of course, we know about the Stonewall riots. Inspired in part by the Black Freedom Movement, emerged Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, who are credited to throwing the first brick at Stonewall. First brick at the cops at Stonewall, saying, we're not gonna fucking take this. Marsha P. Johnson was a self-identified Black drag queen who became a prominent member of the LGBTQ rights activist center in New York City during the 1970s. She was a founding member of the Gay Liberation Front and co-founder with Rivera of the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, aka STAR. Transvestite is not really a term that we use anymore, because it's been used derogatorily towards trans women. But if you look at the trans, meaning cross, vest, vestiere, vestido, that means clothing. So cross, it's basically fancy word for cross-dressing, but it's a little bit derogatory. But it was an old term. So that's why Marsha P. Johnson used that in her organization. STAR was an organization that provided housing and support for homeless LGBTQ youth. Rivera, the child of a Puerto Rican father and Venezuelan mother, identified as a drag queen for most of her life and later as transgender. She was an early activist for transgender representation and participation in the movement, both of which have been sidelined almost immediately by cisgendered gay white men for not being a respectable face for the gay rights movement. In the early 1980s, when the AIDS epidemic slammed into the community and started killing us, some gay men and trans women shook off the shock and went into action. In almost every gay club in Texas, performers stepped on the stage in drag and raised money to fight AIDS. Donna Day, Patti LaPlace, Donna Dumais, Candy Delight, Whitney Page, Tasha Cole, Naomi Sims, Edna Jean Robinson, and the names of dozens of other performers recall the years where drag queens looked across a ravaged community and sang for dollars. $1 became 10, $10 became 1,000, the $1,000 became millions. The sick and dying had a place to get medical help, food, a place to live, a place to rest, all thanks to drag queens. On that note, the absolute leaders of the AIDS crisis help movement were lesbians. Lesbians are, that's why it is LGBT. Lesbians go first, because the gay community, the queer community was so honored that lesbians snapped into action as doctors, nurses, etc. to help during the AIDS crisis. So don't want to overlook that. Shout out lesbians. And this actually brings up something that's been happening recently. The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, I believe they're called. They are a charity of drag queens, of queer people who dress in sort of a pseudo-nun drag form, and they go around and they help queer people. Right now, it's like the Catholic Crusaders of America, some Catholic organization, are spending $1 million to shut down the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Now, one may ask, if you were actually Christian, if you were actually Catholic, if you actually cared about it, didn't Jesus say something about turning the other cheek? So instead of trying to shut down Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence because they're making fun of Catholicism, which what if they are? Turn the other cheek. And if you were actually Catholic, if you were actually Christian, if you actually believed in those values, $1 million? Do you know how many hungry people you could feed? Do you know how many people you could house? Do you know how much medical care you could give with $1 million, and you're choosing it to shut down a drag queen organization? A non-profit charitable organization because they hurt your feelings. Using that Catholic power, using that Catholic money. We've all been to the Vatican. We all see how much money Catholicism has. And you would actually put it to good use instead of fucking gold thrones for a pope to sit his ass on. That's that on that, honey. And that's why it is so sad to see all of the anti-drag that's going on today. According to Time magazine, drag shows have become the latest target of conservative criticism, as a slew of other anti-drag bills have been introduced in at least 14 other states, including Arizona, Kentucky, Oklahoma, and others. LGBTQ+ advocates contend that these bills are just the latest attack from conservatives following the overturn of Roe v. Wade. And that's something that I really want to stress in this video, because something that I've seen so much is this war between cisgendered women and trans women. Trans women being in sports, trans women being on TV, trans women getting access to medical care, trans women being the face of different female companies, etc. Trans rights, LGBTQ rights, and women's rights are like this, mama. They are like this. And then they are pitting us against each other, women and the gay community, specifically the trans community. They're pitting trans women and cisgendered women against each other so we can fight among ourselves and not fight the actual people who, my dog just walked away. He's like, you're getting too loud. Not fight the actual people who are making these laws. Because if we just keep fighting among ourselves, they keep passing Roe v. Wade. They can keep passing all these anti-drag bills. They are literally trying to distract us by keeping us infighting with each other so we don't fight the real enemy. I sound like Sinead O'Connor. If minorities keep fighting among each other, women fighting with the queer community, fighting with the people of color community, if we keep fighting all among each other, we are not, that is exactly what people like DeSantis, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, all these assholes. That's exactly what they want. They want us to fight among each other, because if we fight among each other, we can't band together to fight them. If you are a cisgendered woman watching this and you don't think that gay rights, that trans rights, that LGBTQ rights don't affect you, they are directly and intrinsically tied to women's rights. I do not want to mince words here. I want to be so perfectly clear. Queer rights and women's rights are two sides of the same coin. The overturn of Roe v. Wade has had all these laws where the government can infringe on women's privacy, on their bedroom, on their periods, on their menstrual cycles, on their sex lives. Do you notice that it's the same thing with all these anti-trans, anti-queer, anti-drag laws? It is allowing the government to infringe on the privacy of queer folk on what they're doing in the bedroom, how they dress, how they act. It's the same. Do you realize it's the same thing? It's the government trying to reach into our bedrooms, trying to literally pull down our pants and see what's happening there. They're doing that to women, wanting to freaking track our menstrual cycles to make sure that we're not getting abortions, and they want to do it to queer people to make sure that they're dressing as the sex that they were born with. It is the same thing. I really need all the women, because I have mostly a female audience, all the women who are watching this to understand that when we are fighting for queer rights, for LGBTQ rights, we are fighting for women's rights as well. When there's an attack on women's rights, there's an attack on gay rights. And when there's an attack on gay rights, guess what, bitch? There's an attack on women's rights. One follows the other, always, 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 always. And we need solidarity among each other. If you've been to this channel before, you know I love a little rant. Love a little rant against conservative America. One of the reasons why I wanted to make this video is that we're having all this anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ, anti-drag bills happening. And at the same time, when you go on TikTok, the hunties are getting fierce, they're voguing the house down boots, they're mothering, they're hunty, they're fierce. They're using drag language, and I do it myself because I have friends who do drag. I watch a lot of Drag Race. I watch a lot of Trixie and Katya, as you guys can probably tell from the way I talk and everything. Doing that, I get a lot of my mannerisms, my humor, my vocabulary from the queer community. And when you go on TikTok, when you see voguing, when you see dances, when you see even just the comments, the verbiage that people are using, most of our slang, most of our culture comes from the Black queer community. Our dancing, makeup artistry, the way baking, contouring, that comes from drag. The way we speak, hunty, drag, fierce, work it, mothering, that comes from ballroom culture, that comes from Black culture. Black culture directly influences gay culture, and gay culture directly influences culture as a whole, and it always has. When it comes to fashion, makeup, art, guess what, bitch? Black and queer people are at the head of it. I mean, Vogue by Madonna, guess who invented voguing? Black queer people. And that's probably one of Madonna's most famous songs, right? Dancer and choreography Will Ninja has been recognized as the godfather of Vogue, and the dance, as well as Ninja himself, was covered in the documentary Paris is Burning. It's free on YouTube, Paris is Burning, and it's really impactful. If you've ever watched the show Pose, which is heavily based on Paris is Burning, it's on FX, it's on Netflix as well. It is such a powerful show. I cried so much. It's so good. It is the fashion, the makeup artistry, the acting. I highly, highly recommend watching Pose. I watched Pose before I watched Paris is Burning, and then watching Paris is Burning, I was like, oh my god, Billy Porter's character is literally taking lines right out of Paris is Burning. So highly recommend watching that documentary. That's obviously the basis for a lot of knowledge of ballroom culture, and that is, a basis for this video as well. Language that grew out of voguing is common among the LGBTQ plus community as a whole, such as the term reading, throwing shade, spilling tea, and a big popularization of voguing, of ballroom culture, of drag, obviously is RuPaul's Drag Race. I really enjoy RuPaul's Drag Race. However, it is absolutely not the end-all be-all of drag and ball culture. It is a commercialized, watered down version of, and it's only one version of queer culture. RuPaul's Drag Race should not be your primary resource on queer and drag and ballroom culture. neither should this video. Paris is Burning is a great start. And continuing on just the cultural impact of drag, in September of 2006, Beyonce told a reporter that she was inspired by the whole drag house circus in the States and an unsung part of American black culture where working class gay men channeled the ultra glamour and mocked up catwalk shows. Overall, ball culture has been a fertile ground for new forms of house music and other genres of electric dance music through its DJs. Another example of ballroom influence was in 2019, where the Met Gala's theme was camp, which is described as an extravagant garment that is relatively cheap looking. We saw in Maren Morris's performance, she brought out drag queens. Lizzo brought out drag queens, and even in Taylor Swift's Bejeweled performance at the Eras Tour, Cam, the dancer, has a little voguing set. Beyonce's whole Renaissance tour is basically a drag ball. It's ballroom culture. When you watch it, they're doing drag. They are doing ballroom culture. It is permeated through these white pop stars, white media, as well as obviously just music in general. The hip-hop industry, pop culture in general is so, these mega pop stars, Taylor Swift, Lizzo, Beyonce, I mean, come on, you can't get bigger than that. They are using voguing, drag, ballroom. They are using that. That is how much it has permeated into our culture. That's how much it's important to our culture. The way we dress, the way we apply makeup, the music we listen to, fashion trends, the way we dance, the language we use is all directly influenced by the queer people of color community, by queer POC. I mean, plain and simple. It is so intrinsic to our culture. So when we try to erase this, we're erasing our own culture. You can't separate queer culture and mainstream pop culture. You just can't, because queer culture and the black culture typically are the ones who are the most forward thinking. Those are where we get our trends from. Then white culture just popularizes it, waters it down, capitalizes on it, etc. With that, I hope what you get from this video is that drag is not dangerous. It is the cornerstone of culture, and it has been for centuries. I'm going to have their emails and their mailing addresses here. Lauren Boebert, Roger Taylor Greene, DeSantis, Ted Cruz. I'm coming for your wigs. And yeah, write them a letter, send them an email, flood their voicemail box, and tell them to get the hell out of office, to stop attacking the queer community, and to stop attacking women. Flood this Pride Month. That's all I want from you guys. I want you guys to just flood these anti-LGBTQ politicians, flood their email boxes, flood their voicemail boxes, flood their mailboxes, and let your voice be heard. That's really all I want this Pride Month. So I hope you guys like this video. I know it's a little bit different, but I hope you guys, if you didn't know that much about queer and ballroom culture, I hope that now you guys can see that it is not separate from just pop culture in general. It's a direct influence of pop culture. And if you're a woman watching this, I hope that you learned that gay rights and women's rights are like this, and we gotta stick together to protect ourselves, to protect each other. It's all about solidarity. Please, if you're interested, do more research on it. I gave a very watered down overview of drag and ballroom culture, but it is so much bigger than what I've described. And if you like commentary on culture and fashion, then definitely give this video a thumbs up, because I post videos every Thursday. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram, because I post content there almost every single day. With that, have a fierce, hunty, ballroom realness day. Bye!